Hey guys, and welcome back to the Copper Creek YouTube channel. My name is Ashley from Charmed by Ashley, and today I am going to be sewing up the Claiborne Ruffle top that I am wearing right now. Isn't it absolutely beautiful? I made it out of a double gauze fabric, and I think it turned out really nice. This is a woven top with several options. I chose the high ruffle. So there is an empire waist, empire, however you say it, empire waist, and then the high hip. That's the one that I have made. You can do double ruffle, you can do single ruffle, you can do no ruffle. There is a ruffle sleeve option or double ruffle sleeve option as well. So lots of choices for this pattern, but I really like this style, so this is the one that I went with. I think I'm going to be wearing it to this year's Thanksgiving for sure. So yeah, the pattern will be in the description box down below if you're interested on grabbing that and sewing it up with me. So without further ado, let's get straight into the tutorial. Okay, so I went ahead and cut out my paper pattern, and then I cut out my fabric. I will be using a double gauze fabric. It is a non-stretch, so a woven, but it does have a little bit of give as it has these sort of natural waves to the fabric. So I'm hoping that this works out really well. Double gauze is a very comfortable fabric. I thoroughly enjoy it, so I'm hoping this is a very comfy top. So I'm just going to go through the pieces that I cut out, so what you're going to need, and I will need to iron on some interfacing. Okay, so for this pattern we have a front and back bodice that is cut on the fold. We're going to do the high, I think it's called a single ruffle option, but there is an empire waist or high hip ruffle, so we're going to be doing the high hip ruffle option. So we have one pattern piece that's cut on the fold, and I need two of those. I have this one. This one is for the top ruffle, but we're not doing a second ruffle, we're just doing one. I'm doing the short sleeve. Now I went ahead and did a bicep adjustment on this pattern. If you have large biceps like I do apparently, I do have a video tutorial on how I did this bicep adjustment, and I will leave that link in the description box down below. So if you have that issue, I am making a size 22, I believe. No, a size 20. And then I had to change the sleeve to be like a size 22. So if I wanted to make this according to my bicep adjustment, then that would not have worked for a size 18 or 20. So that's why I had to do that with this pattern piece. And that's why I really, I do have a projector, but sometimes it's easier to just print out the pattern and then you can do your bicep adjustment, and then you'll have that all the time. This is my arm now. Then it came with two facing pieces for the neckline. So these are both also cut on the fold. All my pieces are labeled with masking tape, and that will show me which side is the front and back, or the right side and wrong side. I don't know if there really is a right or wrong side with double gauze, but just to make sure that everything is consistent, I just went ahead and marked everything with my masking tape. And now we're going to start putting it all together. But the first I'm going to start with my interfacing. Okay, so now we're going to take our facing pieces and we are going to put the interfacing onto the back. Now interfacing is a product that will help to create some strength, and so your neckline won't become like saggy or stretch out. So it's a little bit important for certain types of fabrics. Wovens can sometimes distort over time. So this will kind of keep your neckline nice and like flat and beautiful. And we don't want our steam on when we're doing this. Okay, and then we'll take our other piece. Okay, so if you have any interfacing that extends past the edge of your fabric, you can go ahead and trim that off with a rotary cutter or scissors. Okay, these two pieces are prepared. And now we can start to put our top together. So we have our front and back bodice piece, and we are going to put those with the right sides together, lining up the shoulder seams and the side seams. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this on my serger. When you're working with woven fabrics, you can use your regular sewing machine, but you want to make sure that you use sort of an overlock stitch on the edges. So if that's a zigzag stitch, so you're going to sew a straight line, and then you would finish off the edges of your fabric just to make sure that it doesn't fray. But I will be using a serger because that just does it all in one go. So I'm using a Janome Pro 4DX serger. I love this machine. It is my most favorite serger I've ever owned, and you should definitely check it out. This beautiful serged edge. Okay, I'm going to do the two shoulder seams and then the other side seam. Recording and recording. Okay, so now we're going to work on the sleeves, and I have the right sides marked. Also in the pattern there's going to be 2 notches and 1 notch. The 2 notches is going to be for the back, and the 1 notch is going to be for the front. So once we get there I will show you, but just make sure that you mark that on your fabric when you're cutting out your pattern. These sleeves are cut out mirrored also, and they're not like the same. So if you were to look at the curve of your sleeve, it's not a perfectly, like if you fold it in half, it's not perfectly the same, if you know what I mean. So that's why you need to be mindful of where the back is. So when you put it into the shirt, the back of the sleeve is in the back and the front of the sleeve is in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sleeve and I'm going to fold it in half, and I will be sewing up the edge here. That's from the armpit down. If you're making a long sleeve, it would be the same thing. You'd just be sewing down the long edge, and I'll do that with the other one, folding it in half with the right sides together, and I'll just put a couple clips and we'll go ahead and serge that edge as well. Okay, let's sew up our sleeves. Okay, so now we're going to work on our ruffle pieces. We have 2 large rectangles, and what we're going to do is we're going to gather them. So we're going to put running stitches along one of the long edges, and then we're going to gather each piece. So do that for both. And we're going to do that with the regular sewing machine. I'm just going to increase my stitch length all the way, and that'll be easy for me to pull. Okay, so we're going to be using our Memory Craft 6700P to do the gathering on our ruffle. I'm going to go ahead and increase my stitch length to a 5. I have my regular foot in place. Okay, our needle is in the center. So you're going to pull on your thread. Give it a good tail before you begin. And we will start at one end. And we'll give it about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And we're just going to sew all the way down. And we're not going to lock our stitches at any point. When we get to the end, we are not going to lock it, and we're just going to pull a good sized tail, and then we'll cut our stitches. Now, if you want a more even gather, then you're going to do 2 rows of stitches. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm lifting my needle, make sure we have a good tail, and we're going to pull that thread tail out of the way because we don't want to lock that into the next row of stitches, and we'll do that again. Just very close, but not too close. Okay, so we're going to repeat that on our next piece of fabric, and you can already see that it is already starting to ruffle up a bit, which is nice, and I think that is a testament of the type of fabric that we're just working with. Okay, so now we're going to work on our facing pieces. Now this is the front piece because there's a lower neckline, and this is the back, and we're going to take that and we're going to put one side together like this. And we're going to do it to the other side. And this is going to create a complete circle. And we'll go ahead and serge that as well. Now, if you're concerned about your fabric fraying, which I kind of am because this fabric frays a lot, you might also want to sew around outer circle of your facing. Okay, so we went ahead and sewed up our shirt, the front and back, and now we're going to put in our sleeves. So we're going to do something called the drop-in method. I think that's what it's called, where we're going to take our sleeve and we're going to drop it into the armhole because the armhole's already been made. So if you made garments before, some garments you would put this sleeve in and then you would sew down the arm and then down the side seam all at one time. But this one is different. We're going to be putting it inside the armhole. We're going to also line up the notches of the back where the 2 notches are and the front where the 1 notch is. So we're looking at our shirt, and this is the front here. So I'm just going to look to see where my little notches are. This is the back. So when I place it on the inside, this is the right sleeve. We're going to line up our arm sleeve, our arm seam and the side seam of the shirt, and then we're going to line up the top because there's a top marking, and then we're going to line up the notches on the sides. My notches are a little bit hard to see on this fabric, so hopefully yours looks better. And then we'll just go ahead and serge that. It's super easy. You're serging it in the round. Okay, so now we're going to sew our sleeve. Okay, so now we have both of our ruffles, and we're just going to go ahead and gather them. There might be a little bit of wiggle room in the gathering once you actually install it into your shirt, unless you want to get the shirt and then actually kind of gauge how much you need to gather it. Mine is already kind of gathered, which is nice, but what you're going to do is you're going to pull on the bobbin threads. It would work if you use the other thread, but bobbin is ideal. So I'm sure you're like, I don't know which one the bobbin threads are. That's okay. So all you do is you take your two threads and then you just kind of bring it down. So sometimes it gets a little bit more gathered in spots, and that's okay. Just kind of gather it a bunch and then redistribute the gathers evenly across the whole entire piece of fabric. And you can do it from both sides if you want to, or you can just do it from one side. You just need to be careful because if you pull too hard, depending on the fabric you have, you could snap your threads. And that's why I recommend using 2 rows of stitches, because then you're less likely to break any thread. And if you do break a thread, at least it's just one and not both. I've had times where I've had to take it all out and re-sew it because it just wasn't gathering nicely. So that is just fine, but we're just going to gather it. You can get your top and you can sort of just gauge it. Once you have it all gathered, we're going to go ahead and take the 2 ruffle pieces and we're going to sew the side seams together. I'll do that before we actually install it into the shirt. So once we're done that, we're going to take it and put the right sides together, and we will sew up the side seams of our ruffle. Okay, and now we're going to sew the ruffle. Okay, it's starting to take shape. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in the facing. So we're just going to take our facing, we're going to take the front facing, we'll place that against the right side of our fabric, and we're going to line up the shoulder seams. And we're just going to do that on both sides. And then we're just going to be clipping all the way around the neck opening, lining up the raw edges of the inside circle of the facing. Now I am afraid that my fabric, because it is double gauze, has slightly warped. So it seems a little bit bigger. That is something that can happen when you cut out your fabric the day before. Sometimes if you're leaving your fabric hanging over a chair, the fabric will tend to sort of ever so slightly stretch out. And it feels like that's what happened here. So we're going to have to carefully install this facing. Which means the seams might not line up nicely. But that's just how it goes sometimes when you're sewing. You can see the difference. We're just going to hope that this works itself out when we start sewing it. Let's go. See how it goes. Okay, so I think the facing pretty well worked itself out. This is how it is going to look. So you're just going to take that and you're going to fold it into the garment. And we're going to go ahead and get our iron, and we're going to iron the neck. And we're going to try to make this as flat as possible. And that is how it is going to look. Now if you want to do a stay stitch, so what you want to do is you want to sew the seam allowance to the facing. So this is the seam allowance. What we would do is we would do a very close to the edge seam around the whole facing that would be attaching the facing to the seam allowance, and then that will help to keep it to lay flat. You won't see the stitches, they'll be on the inside. We'll do that over at the machine so you can get a better look. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to attach our ruffle. So I am going to flip my ruffle right sides out, and I'm going to flip it actually kind of like a circle. And I'm going to line up the side seams with the side seam of the ruffle. And there's a lot of threads going on right now, and that's okay. We can simply pull those out once the ruffle has been completely sewn in. So it might look a little messy right now, a little crazy. You can pull out those basting stitches also at the end. Okay. Just like that. And if you wanted to mark the center of your ruffle and the center of the shirt, you can line that up, and that'll help to make your ruffle more even. But I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and gauge. And mine is a little over ruffled, so you're just going to kind of pull on it and remove some of the gather. And that's okay. Yours might be more ruffled than mine. Again, I feel like this fabric is starting to warp on me a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's going to take a minute to be able to get it all in place and have my whole ruffle nice and distributed. And hopefully you got the idea and you can move forward with yours. And we'll meet back when it is time to actually sew on the ruffle. Now we're going to sew on the ruffle. Make sure that all of your fabric is out of the way, because I can't tell you how many times it's not and I get it caught in the seam. Okay, so we are just about finished. Now all we need to do is remove any of our little stitches that we have, like your basting stitches. If you want to remove those, if you can see them, you can also do a top stitching that will help to keep your ruffle laying flat. So you can do a top stitch along the edge of the bodice piece. And then we're going to hem the sleeves and the bottom of the ruffle, and then we're going to try it on and see if it fits. I will tell you, spoiler alert, I have tried it on and it does fit. Whew. You do need to, once you put those bodice pieces together, put it on just to make sure that it's not, you know, too tight or anything. But I'm fairly impressed. It's pretty true to size. Maybe I could have gone down a little bit, but I don't mind the oversized look. So we are going to get on our ironing board, and we can get our little stitch ripper, and you can find your stitches, and you can either just like pull it from somewhere. Hopefully it won't give you a hard time and you'll be able to get it out easy. I'll go ahead and do more later, but for now we're going to start hemming. Okay, so we can do the sleeve. So you might want to turn your shirt inside out to do the sleeve. If you have a cover stitch, you can do a one fold. I think the pattern is a double fold. Hem. So that just means folding it once and then folding it twice. So if you have a cover stitch, you could hem it once or fold it once and then use that cover stitch. If you have matching thread, so it'll go like that, and you can do the same on the other sleeve. And then we will go down and we will hem the bottom of the ruffle as well, which, you know, takes a hot minute. So I'm going to fold it up 1/4 of an inch. And then I'll fold it up 1/2 inch, but you get the idea. I'll meet you at the sewing machine when it's time to sew. Okay. I wish I had matching thread, but I do not. I have turquoise, but not this turquoise. So the turquoise would be this turquoise, and it would just be too vibrant. So we're just gonna stick with a neutral thread. I always start under the armpit, just in case our threads are messy. And then we'll do our bottom hem. And I usually start on a side seam. Okay, so now we're going to do a stay stitch. I'm going to put my stitch length down so that I remember. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your facing and you're going to flip it up, and that seam allowance, we're just going to sew along that, and that's going to sew into the facing. So you can do it this way. Just make sure that your seam allowance is going this way, and then we can begin. Okay, just making sure. You can do it from either side if you like to, but just feel with your fingers to make sure that that seam allowance is flipped up. This stitch also can be used to prevent warping as well. So if you're not using interfacing but you need to do a stay stitch, that's also what it can be used for. Okay, and we're done. What do you think? Isn't she so cute? This is the, what's it called? The Claiborne from Copper Creek Patterns, and it is so super cute. As a reminder, I made this in the plus size chart, size 20. I'm typically between a 18 and 20. I usually run 18 at the top and then I go down to a 20. So I did grade this one out. I did do that bicep adjustment. And the sleeves are absolutely perfect. I don't have any tightness anywhere, and it's nice and flowy, and I really like it. And yeah, super easy pattern though. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Once again, I am Ashley from Charmed by Ashley. This is the Copper Creek YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, comment down below with your questions, and then of course if you want to grab this pattern, that will also be linked down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye guys.